this lecture is going to be about my games because I'm the lecturer. If you don't like it, go to another YouTube channel, and I'll be on that one too. And it's going to be about the d4 pawn and the d4 square. So after 64 lectures, you guys will be great. Okay, this one's about this square. Now, a lot of times you have an isolated pawn. Not you guys, because you guys hang all your pawns. But when you have an isolated pawn, it's weak. However, you can have a weak pawn that's not isolated because it can't be protected by other pawns. Now, this is a game that I was playing Fabio Larota, who's actually an American player now, but he was Cuban at the, not Cuban, he's Colombian, sorry. And I first met Fabio in 1988 at this tournament. Anyway, he actually played in the US Championship many years later. He snuck in by some senior rule, I don't know, he qualified. Okay, but he's a typical 2300 type player, and I was 18 and I was trying to get better. Now, I could actually give an hour lecture on this tournament. This was the World Chess Festival, and they had candidates matches, they had international tournaments like this one, and they had a very famous Blitz tournament. And Ben will be happy to hear about this. The Blitz tournament had a first prize of $50,000, like most Blitz tournaments. And all the top players in the world played, and it was a knockout. And in the semifinals, Kirill Georgiev was playing Rafael Vaganyan, and Vaganyan was winning. Let's see, wait, which side was he? He was winning, and he had a rook and pawn ending where he had 2 pawns, his opponent had no pawns. So 2 pawns is better. And then he made a move and went to hit the clock, leaving his king in check, and his opponent took his king, so he wins. And he was like, ah! Then he was like, wait a minute, I didn't hit my clock. But nobody knew whether he hit his clock, and then the guy took the king and hit it, or he didn't hit it yet. But they had the video replay. They were videotaping the games in '88, and they actually did a replay, and you saw his hand go this, and then go, ah, and never hit the clock. By not hitting the clock, his move isn't illegal yet. They had to keep playing from that position, and he won the event. He beat Tal, actually he lost to Tal in the finals. Tal beat him 4-0 or 3.5-half, depending on the result of the last game, which isn't clear. Because they just said the game ended, and that ended the match. So 3.5 won the match. So it's not clear what happened. But anyway, that tournament had Karpov and Kasparov, and it had my favorite first round pairing, Karpov-Shirazi. That was a good pairing. Okay, not good for Shirazi, but good pairing. And Kasparov famously had queen and bishop versus nothing and stalemated his opponent. I was watching it. So that was Kirill Georgiev. He lost that match. Okay, so I was playing Fabio Larota in this tournament. I played him twice because they made great pairing. No, because there were 2 international tournaments because it was a month long, the tournament. And one of the international tournaments was won by Joel Benjamin because, as we all know, it's all about the Benjamins. And he took us out to dinner. That was pretty awesome. There were a lot of us. Okay, so this was one of the few games I won because I mainly lost in this tournament. I was black in a Caro-Kann, and my opponent played the advanced variation, which always been popular. And he played H4, like I'm nobody. And nobody played it back then, but now they play it, especially MVL. So H4 is popular. I played H5. And my opponent decided he was going to win my H-pawn. And he did. Hooray for him. He won my H-pawn. So he played knight E2. He's going to play knight G3 and bishop E2 and take my pawn. Okay? But I've lost pawns before, especially in 1988. Then I lost a lot of pawns. And I counterattacked in the center. Okay, and that's sort of the theme of the lecture today, is attacking the D4 pawn. So I attacked the D4 pawn. Okay, and I put my knight on F5 somehow, which was the style at the time. And I saved my H-pawn. Hooray. Okay, and the reason that black is better here is white has a weak D-pawn and black does not. And the other reason is positional in nature. My bishops are pretty good. This bishop on E3 is a little iffy, but that bishop is needed because we have to defend our D4 pawn. My D4 pawn is protected by a pawn, so I'm good. Okay, and then he played bishop D3, which trades off his good bishop for my bad bishop. But I was a very sneaky young player. Okay, they caught me sneaking a lot. And I played a move that I would never play now because I have a lot of rules I have to follow now. By following all of my rules, I don't even play anymore. I can't. Any move I make breaks a lot of rules. So I got to just lecture now. I made a move if any student played, I would never stop yelling at them. I would yell at them for exactly 1 hour. Why is that, Matt? Get paid by the hour. Very good. I'm not yelling for an hour and 1 minute because I wouldn't get paid for that minute. Okay. I played bishop takes c3 check, which is the best move, but that's when I was good. Now that I have a lot of rules, I would never play that move. Now the reason it's good is white cannot recapture. He played the very subtle in-between move, king c2. Very subtle. Okay. Well, if he takes with a pawn, then when I trade bishops, my knight goes to c4, and I have an advantage, right? Yeah. So he took with the king. And because he has to take with the king, now I attack. Rook c8, threatening, discovered, everything with advantage. So he played bishop b5, pinning my knight, and I should have played double discovered check, confusing the opponent. Knight takes e5, double check. But I played a legal move, rook a5, and he played a4. And we'll start here for our advanced lecture. Black to play and win. Oh my God, I'm missing a period. Where's the period guy? Didn't we hire one? Stealing Perrier. Also, what's the vacuum budget for this place? You! Even Cumber thought that was funny. Yes? Rook takes bishop. The terrible descriptive notation, but 1988, so you get a break. Rook takes b5, exclam, double exclam. He played the best move. And this was when I was young, so I could really calculate. Man, I could see stuff back in the day. What did I do? That's not a chess move. That sacks the exchange and then thinks later. If only Spencer was here so he could sack the exchange. In Russian, please? Very good, because he had the accent then. Okay, knight d4 check. King takes knight is risky due to rook c4 mate. All other king moves are also risky. They all lose a lot of material. He played back to d2, and every move wins. That's my kind of position, but I played the best move. Now, if his king goes to the first rank, I take the rook for free, so he goes to the second rank. Then if I take the rook, he takes back, so I throw in a check. And again, if he goes to the first rank, I take the rook, so he goes here. And now white has a fine game. Okay, king e1, double exclamation mark, threatening to castle either way. Now what's funny is, if he castles queenside, it's mate. Bam. Didn't see that coming. Castle's mate. Okay, I played rook takes b2. Now, if his rook goes off the first rank, I play rook b1 check. So he stayed on the first rank, and I played bishop c2. So his game gets better and better. No. Okay, and then he resigned for obvious reasons. Now what's funny is the winning move was to take on d4, that weak d-pawn. Boy, that was great. Okay, my d-pawn was good. So by having him defend the d-pawn the whole game with bishop e3 and bishop to b5, then he, losing position, king was too exposed. And if he had played the tactically better move, pawn takes, which doesn't get mated, then when we get this endgame, just terrible for white. My knight goes to c4, my rook can go to c4, and his a-pawn is weak on the open line, and his bishop is, terrible, just fighting against the pawns. So that was one of my only wins in the event, except I beat him in the other international also. So he was my favorite opponent. Okay, every other game is a travesty, right? It was a travesty, yeah. Not a tragedy, mind you. Okay, next game was played in 1992. It says Germany versus Germany, very suspicious. But actually, it was at the US Open, which was in Dearborn, Michigan. Spencer remembers it well. It was in August of '92. Okay, I played so badly that event, he was crying like a baby. Okay, now, actually, during that event, I don't think Spencer remembers this, I was getting a TV home, and I had him in the other arm, and I fell on the ice. So that was it was a good situation there. Okay, the doctor said he might have brain damage. Okay, so for those of you who showed up late, this lecture is about white having a weak D4 area and then me punishing it, or my opponent, but not my opponent. Okay, so this was the US Open in 1992, and I used to play the Estonian defense, named after Mr. Estonia, Paul Keres. Okay, also Joe's not too happy, right? Yeah, I think you lost in 10 moves or something. Yeah, I didn't see the you told me about it. Right. I used to play bishop f5. I had white and black in this position, but I preferred to have white. Okay, my opponent played knight c3, which is fine. There's other moves. And we played in this way. You could also play knight c6 if you're crazy, and I've played knight c6 many times, but c6 is a bit more solid. Bishop f4 is a bit iffy. And now I play queen b6, and there's no defense to b2, so my opponent resigned. No, not really. He played queen to b3. Strangely, I've had this position many times, even though bishop f4 is a stupid move. And the way for black to get the advantage is very strange. It's to totally give the center away with the move d takes c4. Obviously, queen takes c4 runs into queen takes b2, but white can just take and play e4, and bishop takes c4. Looks good, but it's not good. Because black's going to play b5 and b4 and bishop b4 and knight f6 and totally destroy white's center, which is what I try to do. Obviously, white doesn't want to play e5 because then his center is totally blocked, and my bishop on g6 is great. So he defends. And actually, white's just defending his center. If you remember the theme of this lecture, which I told you 2 minutes ago, so you probably forgot, is the weak d4 pawn. And by him defending his e4 pawn, now his d4 pawn's weak. So I get to gain a tempo attacking it. Rook to d8. I'm surprised I didn't castle a queen side. I like to do stuff like that. And he played knight to b3. And I played knight to d5. I learned this trick from Luc Winans, who was the only Belgian grandmaster when I lived in Belgium. And now some guys moved to Belgium. So there's some other Belgian grandmasters. But he always told me, when your bishop's on g6, if there's a white queen on d3 or c2 or a bishop on d3, you have this trick, knight to d5. Well, white doesn't want to take the knight. Black will have 2 bishops and a better center. So he moved his bishop. And once again, I'm attacking his d4 pawn because that's the lecture. Now his knight on b3 is defending it, but his d4 pawn is pinned. So if I get to play e5 or c5 safely, he has trouble capturing. Rook d1, trying to defend on the d line. Knight c4, attacking the b2 pawn, obviously. Bishop c1. So he played bishop f4 to g5 to d2 to c1. Okay, every square but bishop e3 defending the pawn. e5, finally. Okay, and now I'm going to get all the dark squares on the queen side. When that pawn goes away, I'll have all these squares for my bishop and my knight. And black just has an advantage. Black just has a nice position. Now he went a little crazy because he hadn't gone crazy yet. So it was about time. He played bishop b1. Okay, and which French player should have white here? Back row. Very good. Okay, bishop b1. If you were here last lecture, you would have gotten that. Okay, or if you would have said the answer, you would have gotten it. Okay, bishop to f7. I like retreating also. Castles, takes, bishop c5. Uh-oh, and now the d4 pawn is gone, but I still attack d4. Knight e2, castles, and yeah, you can see white's position is very suspicious and passive and bad. King h1 out of the pin. I double rooks on the d file. He doesn't let me because he's mean. And knight e3. That was a very nice trick I played. So here, he looks like he's going to trade all the pieces and just be worse because e3 is weak. But I played knight e3 first. And I take all of his pieces. And then the director came up during the game and said, by the way, this is giveaway. So I resigned. Okay, and I took everything. And I took this. Okay, and he resigned here because down the exchange and worse. So that was a game where I was attacking d4 the whole time, and he was defending it the whole time, and it was very much in the hyper-modern style of I have the center, I attack the center crumbles, and I won. So yeah, he got his nice center here, f3 and e4, but his bishop was stuck on b1. Okay, and those were the days when I could actually play chess. I actually did well that tournament. So who would have thunk that? Now, my two favorite games, this one especially, certain people such as, oh, I don't know, Matt Larson could learn from this game. Okay, this game, I needed a draw for clear first place. My opponent offered me a draw, I declined, and then he laughed. Okay, and then I laughed all the way to the bank. And somebody's like, why are you walking to the bank laughing? I was like, I don't know. Okay, so I'm black, and I'm playing Ariel Levy, or as he's known in Michigan, Levi. Okay, and at that time, and this is not a joke, although it is, but it's not, I had a Chevy. It's true. So I drove my Chevy to play Levy, but Levy resigned. Okay. Anyway, so I'm black, and I played my usual boring, boring world of Niels Bohr. Okay. And he played d4, which is unusual. Normally they play d3, knight bd2, and then Leko, Tomaszewski, and Pano shrug their shoulders. I guess it's a draw. Okay, yeah. So, okay, he played d4, which is very good for my lecture because d4 is weak. Okay, and I took the knight, and I'm solid. Okay, and this is the game I lost to Elvest in 90 moves, I think. And he played e4. Now, if he wanted to draw, he should probably move his pieces around in a circle, okay, and then offer a draw, and I would decline. But he played e4, going for the advantage, or as I would say, playing for the disadvantage, because now d4 is permanently weak, as you will notice over the next 10, 15 moves. And now I Kamski'd it up, which means I played well. I don't do that anymore, so I can't say it. But when I was younger, I would play like Kamsky. I'd beat everybody, and I would play the same openings he would, even though he wasn't born yet. I still did it. So after all these trades, the d4 pawn is weak. And you can't defend d4 with another pawn, so I'm going to put all of my pieces on d4. And I did. Okay, that's about as much as I could do a little more. And the problem is, white can't do anything. White just waits around, and I'm going to play knight d6, knight f5, and I'm going to take that d4 pawn eventually. Or c5, or queen b6. I'm going to keep, Just go back to chess. Go back to chess base? That won't possibly work. Okay, there we go. Now, at some point, he had to give everything away. He defended, and I played e5. Now you'll notice d takes e5 is risky because his rook's hanging. Right? Yeah, true. So he played d5. And now f5. And this is how Kamsky used to win when he played in the US Championship here earlier this year. He would play this opening, then he pushed his kingside pawns and crush people. Rook e3, e4. So now d4 was weak, now d5 is weak. And just like Nakamura did yesterday, 2 days ago. It wasn't yesterday, it was a free day. 2 days ago against Caruana, he blocked up the bishop on g2, although he did it in reverse because he was white. Okay, now d5 is weak. And eventually I win the d5 pawn. Win all of his pawns. And then since Spencer is here, I sacrifice the exchange, but only because Spencer's here. And I have good compensation. What game that happened today looks like this position? Happened today. Spencer? No, today. Very good. The game, yeah, except unlike Caruana, I won. See? And my opponent's better than Gary. We're on board 1. Gary loses all his games. Yeah. This is actually very similar, except that game had queen and rook against queen and knight. We have an extra rook each. That's very helpful when I checkmate him. It wasn't hard. It was hard for Caruana to checkmate Gary today. He had known pieces. I got some pieces. Yeah. So this is terrible. And I gave him the sugar me do here. Okay. Yeah, rook d7 was a good move. With queen c4 mate with advantage. He stopped it. And then he kept playing like Caruana did against Nakamura. Okay. All right, then he resigned. Yeah, and I told you that I was going to dominate d4, and I did. See, even when the pawn was gone, d4. Okay, so I learned a lot from that game, actually, which leads me to my next game. The coup d'etat of d4, okay, which made no sense, but you guys aren't getting paid, I am. Advanced, and that was against Lane. Now, I like beating Lane, not because, he's a grandmaster, I don't like him, but when he loses, he complains a lot, and when he wins, he doesn't. I like to hear the complaining, so I like beating him. My favorite Lane story involving me, which there's a lot of my favorites, but my favorite, I'm playing in DC in the Atlantic Open, I believe. Last round, he's not there. I set up my board pieces and clock. He shows up late, and he says, "Can we use my clock?" And I'm like, okay. I take my clock away and put his clock. Then he says, "Can we use my pieces?" And they were like, garbage. So I was like, well, my set's new and your set's garbage. And he's like, "You want to use your set? Okay." He was really, really mad. Okay. And his set was the worst set I ever saw. Anyway, and that's for a Russian set. That's saying something. Okay. But anyway, I mean, imagine like one of these sets if it was 40 years old. Okay, that's like his set. Okay, so we played, and we remember used his clock. You got to use his clock. And he lost on time with 8 moves to go. And he was like, "What?" And he was looking at his clock. It's like really funny. So yeah, I like playing Lane. He's funny. Okay, so this game I'm playing in Italy Lane, 2004 in Chicago, in the Chicago Open. I'm black in the King's Indian. Now, this was the Chicago Open where out of 7 rounds, I had 6 King's Indians. They gave me black a lot. No, I had 3 with black and 3 with white. I was playing the King's Indian in those days. Okay, so I'm black. Now, I played here in Joel Benjamin's style. I don't think anybody else plays like this. C6. Okay, any good player here plays knight c6, and some good players play knight bd7. But okay, I play c6, and then bishop to f5. And now, if I didn't play c6, probably I would hang my b7 pawn and my rook, which all of my students do every game. Okay, but I play c6 first. b3, knight to e4. So my idea is to trade all the pieces and bore him to death. Okay, and he was in his 70s, so could work. Okay, bishop b2, and we take and go to e4. Okay, now I remember there was a game played at the club here between somebody good and somebody not good. The good player was some good grandmaster, and black was one of you local guys. And I remember when bishop h3 was played in that game, it's about a year ago, the guy with black was like, I don't understand why he played that.
Robert Hess against Ray Krasinski.
That's correct. It was Robert. Yeah, very good. Good audience here. Yeah. And he's like, why did he play bishop h3? I don't get it. And I was like, well, that happened to me years ago. Okay, so white wants to move the knight and then play e4, f4, g4, and then Matt Larson would be happy. He's like, yay, I took all my pawns up. Okay, but okay, if he moves this knight, I'll play bishop takes g2. After bishop h3, it's very hard to play bishop takes g2. Really, I'm not kidding. So now, if it was white's turn to move, white would play something like knight to g5, and then I would cry. Okay, so that's the idea behind bishop h3. So I take the knight, and then play d5, and now you're like, wait a minute, he said this lecture was about that weak d4 pawn. Oh, okay, now I get it. Okay, so I took the knight on f3, and then I made sure the pawn on d4 couldn't move. And he played rook e1, and I played d takes c4, my best move of the tournament. That required positional, strategical, and tactical understanding. And the idea was, when he took my knight, which was ridiculous, but I mean, doesn't make it, I mean, it's not ridiculous because if you see what's happening, but you wouldn't expect that. If he takes the normal move, he's normal position, then I play knight b6 with threats even you can see. And if that's defended somehow, bishop f1, queen d3, then I play knight a4. And then I take on d4 because I said I would before the lecture. Or I'll throw in c5 first. Okay, and then I don't know what white does here. White's just worse. So that was pretty awesome. So he took my knight. And then, okay, obviously white's worse here. He just has pawns everywhere. Crazy. Okay, e6, and then I'm just going to triple, quadruple up on the d4 pawn. Now, the typical player in this room, typical intelligent audience, man, there's a Three Stooges that makes a lot of fun of this. You know, you guys would move around, and then I would play rook d8, rook d7, rook d6. I'd make Alekine's gun or some kind of other gun, 44. And then I would take on d4, and I would win. But Anatoly Lane is a grandmaster, and he knows that's going to happen. And he's like, man, if I lose my d4 pawn, my pawn structure is not too good, and I'm down a pawn. So I can't just let black play rook d8, double, triple on the d file and take my pawn. I got to do something about that. So he decided to play crazy, because then he won't just lose, it'll be a big fight. So he played crazy. b5, that way he can never play d5, because his pawn on c4 is going to be gone. So he just went totally crazy. He princed it up. h4, h5, h6, d5. Because strategically, you're just going to lose. I'm going to play rook b5, rook h5, rook d5, rook d8, and be 3 or 4 pawns up. So he's like, okay, let's go crazy. Takes, check, and then I resign because of mate. Oh, no, I didn't. f6 and king g8. Okay, so now I'm up a pawn, I think, and I have 2 passed pawns. 2 passed pawns is good. Okay, and now we're still fighting for d4. Queen d4, very suspicious. And this was a long time ago, so I could actually calculate then. Bad news for him. Attacking the h6 pawn. And f5, more crazy moves. And d4, yay. Now my d4 pawn is weak. He methodically wins it and I lose the game. No, that's not what happened. Now I'm gonna queen those pawns. Okay, now I calculated because I used to be able to calculate. So Matt Larson will appreciate this. Instead of winning simply, I let him take my queen and mate me, but I saw it all. So it was okay. Queen g8. Yeah, if we trade queens, I have a good endgame. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And he won my queen with brilliant tactics, and then I queened. So, yeah. Okay, and then he resigned. Although I was surprised he resigned because he can check me like 70 more times. But I control d4, so it's clear now, like you can't, yeah. So that game I liked because of basically one move. Okay, if we can go back very slowly. I used to be faster than this. If we go back slowly, the key move of this game was d takes c4. And the idea was, because his queen is on d2, I have this knight a4 move. And this is everything. Yeah, now I'm threatening the pawn and knight a4, and his center totally collapses. Otherwise, white would just be a little better. So, like in this position, rook e1 is a mistake, and he just didn't see the dc4. When I took on c4, then he saw what was happening, so he tried to bail out and get some kind of equal position. But after e6, this pawn is permanently weak, and okay, his other pawns aren't so good either, also suspicious. So that was one of my favorite King's Indian games. And he didn't complain too much after the game, so I didn't like that. I want to hear some complaining. And to finish up with the complaining story so that you understand things better, many, many years ago when I lived in Europe, I befriended a grandmaster named Plachetka from the Czech Republic, which is good at Plachetka. And he said he was playing Vlastimil Jansa, the Hungarian grandmaster, and the game ended. And Jansa said, I was winning and this, that, and the other, and I should have crushed you. And Plachetka said, I agree. And that made Jansa really mad. He's like, what? So then they analyzed the game, and obviously Jansa was crazy, but he was mad. But I used that in the last round of Foxwoods. I won a game in 70 moves in 6 hours, where I squeezed the guy for 6 hours. And when the game ended, my opponent, I should remember his name, but I won't say it. He said, I was completely winning, and I said, I agree. And then I had to drive home for like all night. And he didn't say anything. He's like, oh, you agree. Exactly. Then the next day, I put it on my whatever computer it was then. It's before Ribka, so I don't know. And it said, I was up 0.05 to winning the whole game. He was never even the zeros. It's like even on move 1, I was always better. But he was completely winning according to him, so I agreed. Okay, and this game, my opponent did not complain. He didn't say I was completely winning, so that was unfortunate. Okay, I like when my opponents complain a little bit. But yeah, so D4 can be weak even when it's not isolated because the pawns can't go to C3 or to E3, so they get attacked. If you follow my lectures and you come to my lectures a lot, my main complaint about my own play when I'm white is my C4 pawn. I play D4, C4, and then my C pawn's always getting attacked and I lose it. But in these games, since I fianchetto my king bishop a lot, I do in the Slav, I do in the King's Indian, I'm usually attacking the D4 pawn, so my games are in the D with this idea. And if you play D4 and you're not, what's his name? The guy's name I can't remember. John Boyer. Thank you. See, I remembered it. John Boyer's obviously playing E3 and C3, and then he's trading them off and putting them back on E3 and C3. You're not going to win his D pawn, okay? Because he's playing the London and the Kali and the London Kali. Okay, so when you play him, you're not going to attack D4. He's got to defend it 8 times. But if people play more aggressively and try to crush you, they're weakening squares, and eventually, if you can attack them with enough pieces, their position will crumble like this one. And I'll never forget when I played D takes C4 because it's such a strange move to give your center pawn away for the B pawn for the only reason to play knight A4, and then you're totally destroying this diagonal, the D4 pawn. So after this, he should have just resigned out of respect. But okay, he played on to the bitter end, and eventually I queened a D pawn, which I still don't get. How did I queen a D pawn? I don't have a D pawn. But yeah. By the way, going crazy was absolutely correct. Because if he didn't go crazy, I'm just going to take his D pawn, and it's going to be really bad. Then, completely lost. And going crazy was complicated. That was, yeah. But usually Lane, a very solid positional player, when he's white, crazy is not his specialty. His specialty is slowly grinding and winning, like sort of the way I like to play. Okay, so when I lecture again, which I'll do next week, I'll try to show similar, not D4, but some other square. And then after 64 lectures, you're all set. Right? You agree?